Onion Flower Pot was not a stallion, much given to deep thought. He knew what he liked and liked what he knew. Since colthood, he had known he was destined to work on his family's farm, growing vegetables that they could either sell at the village market or give as fizzles to the unicorns who raised the sun and moon, or Pegasi who controlled the weather. His plans were for his samely quiet life that had been thrown off somewhat with the harsh winter of the Wendigos, but all but destroyed the farm, and much of the village died of starvation and frostbite while their leaders were off choosing a new land and naming it. Life here at the Castle Everfree was nearly as good as working on the farm. He still plowed fields in the spring, nurtured the crops in the summer, harvested them as autumn, and stored them away for the winter. The only real difference was the scale and money. He no longer needed to sell anything, since everything grown the castle grounds went to the castle kitchens and stores. He had once assumed he would marry some nice young mare, and they would take over the farm when his parents were no longer able. The nice young mare had never happened, but he had took over his head grounds pony after his father retired and took pride in his work. He stood there at the doorway to the kitchens, leaning on a stick he tried not to use when his stubborn subordinates were around. He was a strong, big-chested stallion, even bigger than his father had been, but the age caught up with every pony eventually. He marveled at that Princess Celestia and Princess Luna looked as young as they had since the day they came to Equestria. Whatever troubles were going on, Onion had the confidence that his princesses could deal with it. They had defeated Discord, hadn't they? He had been there when the Master of Chaos changed what remained of his village into flowers that sang his praises and then set them fire onto them all. The princesses had turned the beast into stone and had saved as many ponies as they could, bringing them all back to Everfree with them. They had defeated King Sanjuin and made it safe for villages to grow into bigger and bigger towns without fear of being targets for griffin raiders. They raised the sun and moon, allowing unicorns to turn their magic into more creative fields that enriched the lives of all of Equestria. Onion remembered the time when art or music were greeted with snorts and decoration. Now that the castle often had evenings for every poetry and song, there were plenty of portraits in the halls and sculptures surrounding what remained of discord in the gardens. His reverie was interrupted by the movement from the corner of his eye. He blinked, squinting a little. He really needed some of those new-fangled old spectacles that the glassmakers had been developing in Unicornia, but he worried his grounds ponies would respect him less if they thought of him infirm. He saw a blob of yellow and pink moving up and down the hill and wondered what Posy could be doing abroad at this hour. It was only just sunrise. Onion had awoken earlier because his old bladder can't cope the way it used to, and he once was up there was no getting back to sleep for him. He liked watching the sunrise with a cup of nettle tea, and often stood at the kitchens before even the scullery maids stirred in their beds. Posy was a nice young mare. He reflected she would make some stallion a fine wife some day, if he had been a few decades younger. But no, that was foolish thinking. Some of the things were not just meant to be. Still, for such a young, small mare, would certainly work. She always acted like she had something to prove to the other grounds ponies. Onion couldn't care less about the hedge witches and superstitions, but he recognized how it could be affected the other's judgment. That was only why he had taken Posy into his arms in his team, instead of leaving her to be absorbed into the great mass of hoof maidens, maids, and cookery mares. The girl had a talent with plants, and even deserved the chance to show there wasn't even an ounce of malicious witchery in her. He sipped his tea and listened to the birds as they gave dawn chorus. As this last sunrise colors gave way to the blue sky, the floorboards above them groaned with the weight of ponies, waking and dressing for their morning duties. As he was turning away, he saw the blob of yellow and pink returning. Posey didn't come in through the kitchens, instead passing a sight through a small door in the castle wall. Onion shrugged, deciding that he must have been doing that new ritual he had heard young mayors talking about. He couldn't imagine why washing your face in morning dew would make any kind of difference to your looks, nor how you were supposed to see the image of your true love in a puddle, nor get his initials from the seeds of a pomegranate, nor of any of the other immutable things young mayors did these days. It was all a bit beyond him, quite frankly, as long as Posey did her work well. However, he wasn't going to inform the guards that she had been in the grounds before dawn. It was all innocent fun of youth, after all. Onion's old ears had been far too away to hear the creak of the small gate in the wall that opened the grounds. He had not seen Posey walk unthinkingly to the forest, but seen her strangely blank eyes search out for plants and tubers that she dug up using tools rather than her mouth or hooves, as she usually would. He didn't see her carrying a basket when he spotted her re-entering the castle, nor would have he had recognized half of the things she had carried in it. A farm pony like Onion Flowerpot had never learned about what grew in vicious forest like the one around Castle Everfree, and certainly did not know what a cheerful combination of the most innocent-looking things could do. But Posey did, however. Clover sat in the center of the circle of different-colored candles, eyes closed as he carefully picked through another layer of past events. Psychometry was one of the most complicated things than he had predicted. It required long hours of careful observation, and even more careful elimination. He had found that each layer of past events was not chronologically defined. Stretches of time when no pony had been in the chamber did not register, for which he was grateful. It was only when life and movement entered the place and that his spell had done something to work with and showed him what had happened. He went backwards, seeing the first events of the day, then yesterday and the day before, and so on short bursts of time. Each layer consisted of a few minutes, which he had to observe before discarded them useless. His suspicions of the guards had not completely abated, so he was forced to watch as ghostly versions of them moved around the representation of the chamber and the spell had created in his mind. Either fortunately or unfortunately, they always did what their reports say and they had done, nothing more and nothing less. The Royal Guard were apparently a bunch of very truthful, very thorough, very loyal ponies. But at the end of each yet another fruitless layer, Clover sighed heavily, marking his place as one might place a small petal on the correct line of scroll to keep it from flaring up. He opened his eyes and stretched his back. The 4 candles still burned around him, though if he didn't find something soon, he was going to have to ask Celestia for replacements. He stood stiffly and snuffed out each one with a lot of dot of telekinesis to preserve their lifespan a little. First the back of the candle of wax and ash from the dragon fire for slight beyond sight, then the yellow candle of wax and the sap for grounding his spirit while it separated, even it was just a small distance from his body, then the gray candle wax and the pieces of stone from the elements chamber to link him to the place whose past he wished to see, and finally the red candle, a mixture of wax and his own blood to bind the magic to him and him alone. Starswirl had spent a long time developing his spell, even though his path had not crossed with his old mentors in years. Clover continued to marvel at the level of what Starswirl could do. The world would be just a much gloomier place on the day he had someday died. But not for a long while yet, Clover thought. Unicorns had the longest lifespans of all three pony races. Some posited this as because this exposure to magic increased longevity, which would certainly explain why Earth ponies tended to be short-lived. Clover himself had only had a few gray hairs in his mane, and his wrinkles were only the laughter lines around his eyes, while the Earth ponies had been colts when Equestria was made, it were now old nags. As he snuffed out the last candle, he realized through the green after images that a maid had left a tray of food for him at the circle's edge. He was used to this. His trance was using the spell. It was so deep he rarely heard any pony enter or leave the chamber in reality, and the kitchen staff had been given strict instructions not to speak to him or break the chalk circle on the floor by stepping over it, snapping him from his trance. That way it would not kill him, but he would be left with the most appalling headache, lose his place in the layers, and have to start all over again. Thus, whenever meal times came and went, a servant would leave his tray of food at the edge of the circle for him to find when he woke up, and would return sometime later to retrieve it when he was done. Clover settled down to eat, still thinking about where he had reached in the layers. He was now at the day immediately after the theft. Surely there wasn't and couldn't be any more left to go around before he reached his goal. He imagined what Celestia's face would be like when he brought her the information she so desperately wanted. Not for the first time. He wondered whether some Griffin magician had managed to slip up in and do the deed, and wished he had stayed in Stalwart longer to learn more about their magic stuff. Did griffins know how to create fire from the air like dragons? But if they could, then why was King Sanchuin trying to make alliances with the Dragonlands? Dragons typically disliked anything that wasn't a dragon, and the older and more powerful they got, the more likely they were to incinerate first and ask questions later. Starswirl had once speculated that the only way a dragon would ever agree to help a race is not its own was if it was hatched and raised by that race instead of by dragons. The tartness of the soup momentarily startled Clover out of his musings. He smacked his lips, wondering what flavor it was. It looked to be like carrot, but it tasted like lemons. He took another mouthful, rolling it in and around his tongue. It wasn't unpleasant, but the sharp taste overpowered by any other flavor. He took a bite of the dark, crusty bread, finding it much more agreeable. In the end, he only accustomed half the soup and all of the bread. He had set the tray aside, hoping whoever had made the soup would not be annoyed with him for not finishing it. Then he used his magic to reignite the 4 candles and settled back to his work. When he was even closer to his goal than he had realized, he peeled away the layer of happenings where he had set off. He saw ghostly versions of Celestia and Luna in the chamber. Celestia ran from corner to corner, Luna raising her head as if trying frantically to sense a connection that was no longer there. This was the immediate aftermath of the theft. He was now so close. He watched as Celestia made her announcement that she was going to go look for the culprit, and that whoever it was couldn't have gone far, and then left the chamber with the captain of her guard. Luna remained a little while longer, watching as a combination of her own personal guards and her sisters scoured the place. Then she too left, and the scene began to fade. Before they could replay themselves, Clover reached out with the spell and took hold of the images as one might the corner of the piece of paper on top of a pile of similar papers. He peeled it off and set it behind his consciousness, allowing the events proceed as it came to his view. The door was intact. Finally, he was there where he wanted to be. He shifted his consciousness to face the door and waited. Within a few seconds, the edges flared, but not with yellow or orange flames that he had expected. Twists of black flame curled around the edges of the door. He watched in growing concentration as they stretched and whirled, melting with the hinges. They soon flare up, and then the doors crumpled inwards into a shower of icy blue sparks. Clover watched a mounting horror as a figure stepped into the chamber and went straight for the elements of harmony. Princess Luna? Her whole body was still cracking with blue and black flames. The Princess of the Night stood before the 6 bright gemstones set into 2 tiaras, whose on the left shaped like crescent moons, those on the right like a blazing sun. Her horn glowed as she picked up both tiaras and brought them to her. First the wards treat me like an enemy, and now this? Wherefore art thou silent? Wherefore can I not hear thy whisperings? The tiara of the moons glimmered, and Luna shielded her face from the light, dropping the tiara as if it was suddenly too hot to touch. When the light had faded, she looked back, face shifting into an expression of rage Clover had never seen from her before. A moment later he realized why. The tiara she dropped was gone. All that remained of it were 3 uncut gems, while like the other 3 retained both their sun shape and their royal setting. Clover understood what Luna herself must have had an instant. Her connection with the elements of harmony had been broken. Somehow he had lost whatever special qualities bonded with them, and while Celestia's connection remained as strong as ever, this obviously angered Luna, judging by the tears streaming down her face. Wherefore hast thou forsaken me? Her past self demanded. Wherefore didst thou seek to bar the door from me? May I not seek thy counsel as my sister doth? I aided her in casting those wards to keep out enemies only. Thou doth allow her entry and listen to her worries, yet bar my way? Wherefore I am not thy enemy, I am thy chosen. I am thy chosen. When the elements did not immediately heeded her and resumed their tiara, she screamed at them. For a moment her eyes glowed, startling turquoise pupils shrinking into angry slits. Her mane and tail flared in rage, mimicking the stars of the night sky. Wherefore dost thou prefer Celestia? She sobbed. Still the elements of harmony ignored her. Clover watched as Luna's mane and tail flickered back to air, and her eyes closed as if sudden exhaustion. When she opened them again, they were their usual shade of blue, though her tears had evaporated into those strange dark flames. Her horn flared as she tucked the 3 loose gems under one ring, holding them in place, and did the same for the other side with Celestia's tiara. Then she departed the chamber as the images began to fade. Clover marked his place and broke from his trance. He couldn't believe it. Princess Luna was the thief, and the elements of harmony had rejected her? For what reason? And why she had taken them away instead of telling Celestia of what had happened? He got to his hooves to snuff out the candles, but he immediately sat back to his knees. He suddenly couldn't get his breath. He struggled upright again, but his chest felt tight and heavy. He clutched at the front of his tunic as bright spots flared behind his eyes. His heart beat faster, and every beat sent a more powerful jolt of pain around his body. He tried once more to stand out, but toppled onto his side and lay kicking uselessly. Had the psychometry spell caused this? He knew it put a lot of strain on the caster's body. That was the reason for the blood candle. He could see all 4 candles still alight, yet still in his breaths became shallower, and the terrible weight in his chest increased. He needed to tell Celestia what he had seen. He had to warn her that Luna had betrayed her. Princess Luna could not be trusted if she had lied of such an important thing, and kept on lying about it. The moment the thought entered his head, he realized what was happening. It could have not been more obvious if Luna herself had stood over him and told him. Clover gurgled helplessly, without even the strength to call for help, as his heart raced and finally burst into a shower of bright lights and infinite black. Celestia held herself steadily against her own grief. A princess did not cry, even when she was sad. A princess definitely did not break down and bawl like a fool who wanted her mother. A princess had to be strong so that the ponies around her could absorb her strength and be strong too. That was the weight of a crown. She glanced briefly at Luna beside her, dark-eyed, wearing a cape to hide missing patches of fur, all but her naked wings. Luna still managed to look every inch of a princess, though it was midday and she had been awake all night. She held her head high and didn't let sorrow overtake her. It was not usual for the Sun Court and Moon Court to be held together, but Luna made it seem perfectly natural for both thrones to be occupied at the same time. Celestia could do no less than sat straighter, allowing back her tears. Clover the Clever was dead. His heart had failed, this physician said, a common cause of death for ponies of advancing years. He had mentioned that he had never had cast a spell he had attempted on their behalf, and hadn't known whether it would work, nor neither whether there would be any side effects. He had brushed off any reservations that it was dangerous when explaining the reasons behind the 4 candles. Celestia had been so elated that they might find out where the elements of harmony had gone. She hadn't pushed him back for details. Now guilt struck her like a hammer on hot metal of the ironmonger's forge. She was convinced that she had sent Clover to his death and would never forgive herself for it. The rest of the castle Everfree was not so reserved for its mourning. Clover was not only a famous mage, he was one of the founded ponies. His death was unexpected and devastating. Though he had no potential political power, there was a sense that some of the heart of Equestria had been torn out and every pony felt it. His funeral was to be a massive event, attended by the representatives from all 3 pony races across all provinces. The Sun Herald and the Moon Herald blew their trumpets on either side of the audience chamber. Both Celestia and Luna looked up to see a startling white unicorn coming towards them, escorted by a tall blonde stallion who supported her as she walked. Her mouth and eyes were bracketed by wrinkles, but her beauty was unmistakable. Her mane and tail fell in silvery ringlets that were natural, not the product of age. Upon her head she wore a crown of colored glass that represented the best crafts pony ship of their province, representing Her Lesser Highness, Princess Platinum of Unicornia Province, she announced the Sun Herald, and her son, His Lesser Highness, Prince Goldenmane, announced the Moon Herald. Celestia stood and waited for Luna to do likewise and descend to the royal dais slowly so that they would reach the ground together. Platinum, she said, her voice with a mixture of warmth and sympathy. It has been a long time. Would us that this meeting would happen under more auspicious circumstances? Indeed, Celestia, Platinum croaked. She had never had trouble dropping the princess and treating both alicorns as if they were equal. 'Tis a sad day indeed for all Equestria. Clover was a good pony. She swallowed as if she had a lump on her throat. And a good friend, although his travels led him away from Unicornia more often than not. I shall miss him greatly. Is thy son? Luna asked. I do recall that when I saw him last, he was a naught but a runny-nosed colt. Celestia was a little shocked at Luna's praising. So were Platinum and Goldenmane, judging by their expressions, but they overcame it admirably, considering how apt Platinum used to be good reading insults into everything. She had clearly mellowed over the years. Either that or grief had softened into her sharp edges. The years do pass far so swiftly, she said, though not for thee, though art is lovely as when I was but a young mare planting a flag in the snowdrift. She smiled at Celestia, who only wavered a little when giving the same smile to Luna. Thy rule shall be long and glorious, methinks. Although Equestria have suffered a great loss in Clover the Clever, I thank the heavens for thy region. "Thy words are most kind," Celestia replied. "Wilt please thee to be stowed away thy rooms now? Thou have travelled far, and would certainly like to rest." "Indeed," Platinum agreed. "Age hath withered me, if only by little. My beauty fades a smidgen with every passing season, and my strength with it, though I would have crawled on my belly to be here now." Celestia smiled. No doubt Platinum had travelled to Castle Everfree in a carriage drawn by the strongest, handsomest ponies in the province, and would have screeched at the thought of getting her mud on her hooves, much less her belly. Still she fought as it was counted. "We do thank thee for thy attendance, Platinum and Goldmane," said Celestia. After an awkward moment, Luna seemed to remember she was supposed to say something too. "Yes, indeed, we do thank thee." As the two unicorns let out, Celestia took the opportunity to extend one wing and draw Luna close in for a hug. Luna seemed surprised that Celestia had dipped her head and nuzzled her when she had once done in a cave when they were grieving for their parents and friends. "Death is a great leveler, dear sister," Celestia whispered. "It sharpens us to what is true importance of life. Know that I love thee, Luna." "Yes, indeed," Luna replied. "I love thee too, Celestia."
What's up, my pretties? It's the Lion Queen here. I want to appreciate you all for tuning into this video, and I do appreciate you guys supporting my video by giving this video likes and stuff. If you really enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, comment and subscribe if you're new, ring the bell for notifications to when I upload so that way you guys will get updated for whenever I upload. If you want to follow me on Twitter or DeviantArt, feel free to leave a follow on those if you are interested in following me on those socials. If you want to support my backup channel, known as Miss Dark Shigo, feel free to subscribe to it, as a link to that will also be in the About page section. And with that being said, and that being the case, thank you so much for watching, my pretties, and as always, please stay pretty.